So thank you all for coming here today with the traffic and all of that. I'd like to just start with a short first round. Each of you, could you please say one sentence about who you are, what you do, and what does your company do? In your case, it's not a company, but still, it's a... Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Adiri. I work in the Ministry of Finance. I'm a deputy for the head of the budget department, and I deal with the area of infrastructure, mainly energy, transportation, water, agriculture, and sewage.
Yossi, Daskal, all the activity of Bombardier in Israel, Bombardier train, Israel Railways, light train in the future, and also in aerospace issues.
Good afternoon. Golan. I work for General Motors. GM does have advanced technical center here in Israel. We do develop enabling technology for autonomous vehicle, as well as connected and infotainment. Definitely the non-traditional part of our business where the auto industry is expanding fast.
Good afternoon. Jambu, Palaniappen. I look after Uber's business in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Africa.
Boaz, Tzafrir, CEO, Israel Railway. We are the next generation of mass public transportation.
I'm Erez, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Moovit, which is today the world leader in the public transit app around the world. We operate in more than 1,000 cities today in 65 countries.
All right, so thank you for that. I'm going to stay with you, Nir. All of you are going to tell me, or at least some of you are probably going to tell me that this is a huge revolution and things are not going to be the same and they're going to look very different in a very short while. But I'd like maybe each of you to give me some kind of educated guess about how the world is really going to be, say, in 5 years from now, considering the autonomous car and considering the sharing economy.
So I think we have an interesting perspective of this world because we're actually serving a huge community around the world. There are about less than 1 billion cars and more than 8 billion people around the world, which means that most of the people are not using a private car around the world, as crazy as it sounds here in Israel. But when we look at what happened 5 years ago, the revolution of mobile devices allow people now to be completely aware of where buses are and where the train is and how to get from one point to another using public transportation. Autonomous vehicle or other means of transportation probably going to be combined into this big or large pool of options of mobility. Eventually, the way we see it is that people in 5 to 10 years from now are only going to be care about how do I get to a specific destination. The mean of transportation will be more relevant to the time of a day or the location that they are. So the combining autonomous vehicles, other mean of transportation like ride sharing or car sharing will be part of what we call today public transportation. That's a very rudimentary but clear vision to where things are going to be in about 5 to 10 years from now.
So, Gil, you know what? I'm going to jump straight to you, being the car manufacturing guy. When are we going to actually see a fully autonomous car in the big centers, maybe specifically in Israel, and give us some kind of graph? Will there be 10% of all cars by what year?
Well, it's hard to predict, but I will say the following. First, let's define what does it mean autonomous vehicle. It means different thing to different people. If we mean vehicle without a driver, without a cockpit, without a steering wheel, then it's a long journey. However,
How long?
It's a long journey. However, since a lot of resources deployed and a lot of company got involved, we'll see fairly quickly a limited demos, a limited deployment in dedicated lanes, in city centers, in geo-fenced areas where early adopters, users, can use provide feedback, and in a way participate in shaping the next generation of autonomous vehicles. So to conclude, it's the early birds will be very quickly, but it's a long process. It depends what and where, and there's a lot of parameters going into the games, developed world versus undeveloped or developing world, elderly, urban versus rural areas. There's a lot of factor into that, but generally speaking, it's going to be faster than everybody believes, and it's going to be a long journey.
Well, since you haven't given me a date, I'm going to penalize you, and I'm going to ask you a tough question. In the autonomous car business, who's going to win? The computer manufacturers, such as Google, or the old-time clunker builder like GM?
Okay, I completely disagree with that. GM is a completely different company, but it's a different discussion. The fact that GM is here, a full-blown center going after non-traditional and developing autonomous vehicle means a lot about that. But this is a side discussion. So definitely the software and app companies play a very critical role in twofold. First, they push and accelerated the timetable. They force others to put meaningful resources into work. So by definition, time to market with the first autonomous vehicle got way shorter because of that. And second, software companies bring the software product mindset and philosophy, which means even if the product is not ready, it's okay to introduce it and launch it. Even if it's not bulletproof, which means this is a paradigm shift for the auto industry. And this is something that's going to impact the entire industry. And the jury is still out who's be first, but it's kind of the hardcore company needs to grow on the software side versus the software side that need to grow in the massive vehicle production. It's not easy, the gaps are huge. Not everything of the component that you need to put an autonomous vehicle on the road easily available, or you can acquire that. There's a lot of skill set and expertise that need to be grown inside. So I'm a bit optimistic for both sides, I would say.
Okay, Jambu, may I call you Jambu? The man from GM maybe is restricted to say his opinion, GM being a public trading company. Uber is not a public trading company yet. It probably will be, so you can speak freely. And so I'm asking the same question. Uber is saying, I've heard your CEO and founder in many conventions saying that the first car out there is going to buy one and send it on the road for the fleet of cabs. It's a different issue about the relationship with the driver with a statement like that. But according to your business plan, when are you going to buy the first batch of autonomous taxis?
Yeah, so here's my take, right? And I think it's important to address the first part of the question. Over 1 million fatalities a year from auto accidents around the world, right? It's clearly a problem. It's an important problem to solve. There'll certainly be, an impact on the industry broadly, but I think we'd all agree that that's an important problem to solve, right? Listen, I think it's. I think that both of the answers you've heard before, I think, are probably the combination of what you heard from me, which is I think the rate of change will accelerate, and I think anybody who can predict an exact date is a bit unknown. I think it's an area where we're certainly investing. We have now cars that are being tested on the road in Pittsburgh, where our advanced technology center is, and I think for us as a young and historically disruptive technology company, this is certainly the next frontier for which to invest and grow.
So I think I remember from presentation of your people, you're actually claiming that many less cars will be on the road because of car sharing and more effective car, more efficient car, like maybe the autonomous car, etc. Do you have any kind of expectation or guesses as to how many cars less we're going to see? What kind of saving in the amount of cars on the road we can expect?
Yeah, so the way I think about it, and for the folks that were in the room before, you heard a little bit of this, which is now in shared cars, right? So when you move away from personal car ownership and you move towards a model of push a button, go to where you need to go, the delta between effectively what one car can do, about 12 times its, call it, capacity and trips. So a study by the Copenhagen Economics School basically said 3,000 drivers who have opted into ride sharing can take on 37,000 trips on a single day. And so if you use that kind of paradigm and you potentially increase it because cars can run 24 hours, et cetera, you can start to see, some of the impact. And that's significant in terms of passenger journeys, right? You talked about the traffic to get here. When you're driving down the road and you look to your left and you look to your right, most of the cars only have one person in them. And that's ultimately a problem that I think is solvable.
So, Boaz, it seems like the roads are going to be empty. Everybody's gonna have his new autonomous or not autonomous ride-shared car. Who's gonna need the train?
All the others. By the way, trains in Israel too are going to be autonomy very soon. Some airports we can meet and use autonomy train. Our next generation train, which will be controlled by the ETCS level 2, which the new generation of control the train, the driver will be over there only for safety and emergency. In general, we can run, control, stop, accelerate, and all other services need from our control center in Haifa, all over the country.
Yeah, sure. But seriously, when you build train, and it's kind of the same question for a company like Bombardier, you really need to plan decades in advance. This is really, really long-term planning of transportation. Even in a small state like Israel, you have to make decisions which are based on the amount of traffic jams that are going to be on the streets, with the amount of parking that people are going to find next to train station. How does this revolution affect your long-term planning?
Our long-term planning is based on the change of metropolises and the periphery in Israel. It means that we are planning for the year 2040, 2030 today. We are planning to double our capacity within 10 years and triple it within 20 years. We do not base on this revolution. We base on change of habits in our population, change of education, change of skills, and etc.
Yeah.
So if I may add to it, I want to help you with a little bit of facts. So the same space, one lane space, that if you take cars bumper to bumper, their ability to transfer people per hour, still train is about 5x to 10x bigger than cars. So looking at the infrastructure, I do believe that mass transit will continue to be an important part of the mobility grid in the next decades. But we are talking about the ability to shift people from public transit to on-demand. And it doesn't really matter if it's Uber with a driver or an Uber with an autonomous vehicle. Here, you have to maybe try to discuss some other things, which is the conversion of people who are using public transit to other means of transportation. And there's a clear barrier here that we have, a clear visibility to, because we have millions of people are traveling today with Moovit. And we can clearly see that the conversion is a function of a price point. So to take somebody who use public transit and pay X amount of money and ask them to commute every day with on-demand ride, which costs today maybe 5X, is a much bigger challenge than to switch between train and autonomous vehicles. And I think here we need to maybe discuss a little bit about changing the price point. When you take the Uber X unit economic and you remove the cost of driver or the labor cost, you can reduce the price in 70%. And that's where this whole new economy is starting to become interesting. Because if an on-demand ride costs 30% than what Uber X costs today, or any other aspect, and Uber still makes the same amount of money, that becomes more interesting because more and more people would consider to take on-demand ride.
I think the key part of that, and it's a really important one, is regulatory frameworks and sort of government appetite to actually allow for that sort of shift to happen, right? I've heard countless times about cost of transportation in Israel and sort of, you know, how high that is and you know, how much of a challenge it is for, you know, for working people. And I think that part of it, I think, has to come into it.
Yossi, your company makes trains, mostly?
Trains and aircraft.
Trains and aircraft.
And they're very similar, more and more coming closer, the train to the speed of the aircraft. It will happen in the revolution. But a few remarks really for, in the modern Western world, the growth of using public transportation is happening every day. Less private car, more public transportation. The proportion today is something about 70% public transportation, 30% private car that are moving in an urban area. In Israel, the situation is totally opposite. 30% public transportation, 70%, 69, 68, something like this, but 30. I believe this revolution, our McDonald's arrived 20 years after it was in the United States. I believe this revolution of public transportation will arrive here, and I totally share the view of Boaz. The street will be empty and the train will be crowded. This is more the vision for the future. More and more, the public transportation is taking place of the private cars. And it's simply, if you look in a situation that you are sitting in a transportation tool or element that you can read, you can see your mobile freely, and you can do all the activity, and you are sure that in 20 minutes you're arriving from your home until your destination. It's a wonderful situation. Instead to be in the car, going 5 to 7 kilometers an hour and waiting that your neighbor will not hit you and you have to spend time in the garage. This is a different situation, and I believe, again, if I can take the vision 30 years ago, the cars will almost, I put some provocation, the cars will be a Kodak. They have wonderful films, they have wonderful paper for pictures, and they disappear. More and more advanced public transportation system will come in, and less cars. This is what happened in the modern world today. And I believe this revolution started in the beginning of the first job of Udi, 15 years in Israel, and it will continue also here, and the new proportion will be as in the modern world, because we are a very modern country and we will be in this situation in few years.
So Udi, you really have to take the long-term view and the wider view of all of our panelists here. and you see and you read like everybody else about this revolution. And you're in charge of transportation for the Ministry of Finance. So where does it take you? What do you do with this new information? How do you plan? Do you change your plans in any way for budgeting in the next few years, for roads, for railways, all of it?
Okay, thank you. So first, I think that the government faces two main challenges. One is actually is being introduced by all these technologies, and I'll elaborate. And the other one is not a new one, but it's something the government has never dealt with, really, is putting in place really modern and effective public transportation. And I would argue that despite the fact I'm Minister of Finance, it might be very attractive to say that, we don't need public transportation now. I wouldn't say that. Because I believe that in the modern world, and even 20 years from now, the equilibrium of a traffic jam that exists, and many people use public transportation, will still exist. This will be the equilibrium. And the public transportation has a large, as important role in that. So I would say the following. In the area of public transportation, we face a very big challenge now of putting in place some modern LRTs or metros. Actually, from our point of view, it's been a few years now that we try, or actually we put every shekel that we can in public transportation, but the issue is that until now, there were not any, in the last few years, any project that were mature after statutory approvals. Now we are facing the challenge, and I hope the next few years, we have to invest, according to our estimation, a few dozens of billions of shekels in 4 to 5 LRT trains. And I think despite all the new world, we still have to do it. And we'll face this challenge with budget, but also with using PPP, with private-public partnership, and maybe some other means to bridge the gap. This is the first challenge. The other one is actually a new one, because in 2011, when we launched the 5 years plan for the Israeli road company, there was a project, was the technology project. The name was ITS, Information Technology System, and it was putting signs on the roads to tell people where to drive from. So the only thing is that we were lucky that the government company were slow enough not to spend the money before Waze came in place. And today the challenge for the government is not to put the solution, but to enable all these technologies take place here in Israel. Now, some technologies like Waze requires nothing from the government. But if we want, for example, to make people use or enable people use sharing public transportation, that needs regulation in place. For example, take VIA that exists now in the United States. This is something that enables people, give people a new kind of service. It's not a special taxi, it's not a bus, it's something in between. But in Israel today, you can't have it. The regulation is not letting you. So I think that if we want to see in Israel all these advanced solutions for promote sharing, autonomous cars, of course, and public transportation, which is for some kind of on-call solutions, it requires the government to put in regulation, and we have to do it. And I think that if you talk about Uber, so everybody knows Uber, every place it was introduced, it gave a very significant discount for taxi prices. That's known. But the issue every place is how to deal with the taxi drivers, and this has been dealt in different parts of the world in different techniques, and this is something that also the Israeli government will have to address sooner or later.
I'd like to speak. I'm going to stay with you, Udi, for kind of a tack on the conversation. I'd like to speak a little bit about energy. We know that Israel has found a lot of gas in its territorial waters. And actually, it seems that there's too much gas and not enough economic viability to actually extract all this gas. So I read in the papers that I write. And my question to you is, why did the government did not, so far at least, create a larger public transportation based on natural gas, such as buses, which obviously would have many other benefits in terms of pollution and public health. And then I'm going to connect this question to you, for example, to what kind of engine do you think will prevail 5 or 10 years from now? Are they going to be electric or gas or maybe hybrid? But please start.
So I think that implementing natural gas in different parts of the economy, of the Israeli economy, is a challenge. Last year, I think we did a step regarding industry, and we do plan this year to move forward with transportation. public, especially heavy transportation. From what we understand, based on research.
Heavy transportation is trucks and buses?
Trucks and buses. From what we see now, it's in the common knowledge almost today is that for heavy transportation, natural gas is the most efficient, big, clean energy that could be put in place in the next few years. Unlike private cars, which is a different story. Now, the reason it hasn't happened in Israel, there are a few reasons. But as a government, we should take the role of regulation and of infrastructure. And we do see three main problems that we are hopefully going to deal with in the next few months. The first one is the issue of infrastructure, namely the grid, which has been put in place in the cities only now. The second things are the gas stations, which suffered from regulatory problems of what kind of of regulation they should face, and also they face the difficulty they don't have market. So we plan to put some kind of incentive for building these gas stations in the first phase, where they still don't have the market. So because it's chicken and egg, there's no market, so there's no gas station, but if no gas station, nobody will put in place trucks. The third thing, I think that people need to know what the government plans to do regarding taxation. So it's very convenient now that the tax on natural gas from transportation is almost zero. But if one doesn't know what will happen a few years from now, he might want to buy a new truck. So the third thing we have to do is to put some horizon of what kind of taxes we are going to take from this kind of industry. Of course, it should be attractive enough. And I think that if the government will do these three things, gas stations, regulatory and incentives, grid, and some stability regarding taxation, then it will be the role of the private sector to.
Is there a time frame for that? When can we expect to have, 25% of buses and trucks running on natural gas in Israel, in your opinion?
So first of all, our goal is to put in place the things that I've just described in the next few months. And then we believe that in no more than 2 years, 3 years, you can see the bus stations. And regarding public transportation, we already started. We put out, it's not exactly a tender, but we suggest all the public transportation companies that we are budgeting through tenders to buy some natural gas buses. I must say that some of them did it, but in very low numbers. I do believe that less than 10 years from now, if you take into account the rate of procurement of heavy trucks and buses, 10 years from now, I believe we'll see the majority of the buses and significant part of the trucks using natural gas.
Yossi, trains are going to run on what? They run on polluting, I don't know what it is even, when they pass now in Israel.
I will go back to the question about gas. There are some world power countries that have a lot of gas, and they're creating more electric through the electric station. Because safety for trains, for example, on gas, it's a very hard problem in safety. So in the moment you have the electric power stations that deliver you the electric power. This is the electric power that will run forward. The many systems around this electric power, magnetic system, other systems that running in between the trains. But with this electric power, trains are running today 380 kilometers, and it's growing from every 5 years they arrive to a higher number of kilometers per hour. And this is the future, and it's a real revolution when Israel Railways is getting in now in electrification.
Let's ask Boaz, when will we have full electric trains in Israel?
We are running today a huge project to electrify our system. The budget is about 13 billion shekel. We already started, and as of the year 2018, the first train from Herzliya to Jerusalem will run by electric motors. It will be the first line. It will take 28 minutes from Tel Aviv to Hauma station in Jerusalem. And then by the year 2023, all the net will be electrified. So I hope that all the electricity production will be based on natural gas. So we will run on natural gas.
Will we ever have a hyperloop system in Israel? Does anybody want to take a guess at that?
I don't believe it will be in the world because you know the magnetic train today is running 500 kilometers per hour, but infrastructure costs $100 million per kilometer. So the longest magnetic train is around 30 kilometers in the world, and you need a full power station for running such a train. So the same vision that vacuum and other things will run in pipes, it's only 30 people or 40 people. This is not mass transit. It's science fiction that it will be nice for maybe if it will succeed, it will be nice, but I don't see this will be the future of the transportation, not in trains.
So we have one opinion here. So Elon Musk is the guy that is proposing the Hyperloop as a super fast means of public transportation. I'm going to stay with Elon Musk, who is also the founder of Tesla, the electric car, and now Tesla is about to launch a mid-price car, or maybe a little bit above that. And my question to you, Gil, is what kind of engine will win eventually the private car? Is it going to be a Tesla-style full electric? Is it going to be hybrid? Maybe it's going to be a very efficient petrol motor.
Yeah, I'll answer that, but first one comment with respect to the natural gas here. We do have a product today that runs on liquid gas and compressed natural gas. It's all what makes economic sense. In the foreseeable future, we believe that as long as there is the cost of fuel, or gallon of fuel is equivalent to a gallon of water, the economic sense is not that strong. The issue is that you need to take natural gas, compress it, build infrastructure, pipe it to the station, build another infrastructure, be able to modify the engine to be able to handle that. Versus take this gas, run it into utility or power station, turn it into electricity and run EVs, electric vehicle. So it's all about an economic sense. So I'm not sure what the government here or around the world going to invest in with respect to transportation when it comes to natural gas. But vehicle on a high level, it's a platform that has on it autonomous, which is replacing the driver for a high level sense. So the platform itself today mostly run on ICE, internal combustion engine. This engine is getting more and more efficient, and the cost of operating that, which is the fuel, going really relatively new. So it's inexpensive, and it's become to be more and more efficient. So for the foreseeable future, big chunk of our transportation going to stay with internal combustion engine. However, hybrid is just an interim solution. It doesn't make economic sense at all, because you've got two systems. It's heavy, make the car heavy, and you don't get the economic benefits of that. So over time, I believe that the hybrid version will phase out, but we'll see more and more electric vehicle. We'll see more and more electric vehicle. Along with that, we'll start to see fuel cells vehicle, which is another variation of electric vehicle. But definitely, we'll see more and more electric vehicle. Tesla is definitely getting more advanced technologies. GM just announced earlier this year that we're going to put, first time in the history, vehicle that reach above 200 miles, and the vehicle will be around $330,000 US, which is a breakthrough, and which means that in the US at least, this vehicle can be the first vehicle. So EV now is really into the game. $30,000 vehicle, fully electric, fully utilized, so you've got space for everything, and carry five people. This is new game changer. And it's going to be this year versus Tesla that's going to be a year later. So this is going to support GM, and we're going to talk about product here and now.
Okay. Nir, I have just one question, and then I'm going to turn the question to the audience for the last few minutes that we have left. In the platform business, software platform, it seems like it's a winner-takes-all economy, that eventually you see one guy taking the whole business. So Google is taking search, and Facebook is taking social networks. Who will be the guy, who will be the company that will basically take the business of software system for transportation?
So I'm not sure that in our business it's going to be the same because of multiple reasons. The first one is, regulation. Regulation today try to prevent winner takes all. So if you look at the public transit world, in most of the countries, for example, they bid for multiple operators to operate the service that is provided by the government. This is one reason, so regulation can actually prevent winners takes all. The other thing is that we're talking here in opposed to software business, which is relatively, quote unquote, cheap to produce. We're talking about a massive investment in transportation. And even in the on-demand transportation, I mean, it's not a secret. You can all see how much money Uber is raising or raised already, and Didi raised $7 billion, which is getting close to what Uber raised, and the other players. I think it's also a matter of location. So probably in each location there will be one big winner or the mass provider, but others will have some room to operate as well. Mainly because there are different means of transportation, so different flavors of transportation. I believe that different companies will be able to provide different type of transportation. Just as an example, Uber today rules New York by far, and we have a very clear perspective of it based on our users' demand. But in the same time, if you provide them with minibuses, which is a different type of shuttle service, not necessarily that Uber would like or will win this as well. What I'm trying to say is that the variety of means of transportation might create a situation where there are multiple players still around.
Jambu, is Uber going to be the operating system for everything transportation?
Listen, I think it's a fair point, which is this is inherently a local business, right? And you're dependent on a lot of things. You're dependent on city infrastructure, regulation, availability of supply. It's why Uber works differently, city to city, country to country. That said, I think some of the philosophical points of shared vehicles, access to mobility, reduced costs, I think those are the principles that we're approaching the business with, and we're starting to see the kind of downstream impact of that on cities. And it is it's a remarkably similar experience to open the Uber app in over the 400 cities that we're in around the world. So certainly our ambition is to see how much value we can add, and what we can learn from those markets and cities up is I think also quite valuable.
All right. I'd like to ask a question from the audience. This light is blinding me. Is there a question over somewhere? Can you see some? I can't see. Yeah, please. And this question will be for whom? For everybody.
So
okay, shoot.
I can pick up the second one. So regarding smart cities, one of the challenges in the last, I would say, 50 years of cities were to try and understand how they can make the system more efficient. And part of the problem is that you're talking about hundreds of millions of people, and the most important thing that we're missing is people's intent. So how do you really measure how many people needs to go from this area to this area in what time of a day in order to build, let's say, an efficient public transit system? Two things happen. One, is the on-demand revolution. Once, you click on a button and you get an Uber, that's one way to solve the problem, because now you know when people want to go or where they want to go to. The other way is what we provide today. So at Moovit, at least, in 1,000 cities around the world, we collect about 200 million data points a day. What it actually does is gives us a very clear perspective of people's intent, where they want to go, what time of the day, and how long it takes them to get there. That kind of information helps today, and we're already cooperating with multiple government institutions or municipalities that are actually interested to understand how they can make their city more, you can call it smart city, but also more efficient in regards of public transportation or even traffic lights. So I think that today transportation became way more smart and way more monitored in a way that it helps to improve the efficiency of mobility.
I would agree with you, but it depends. The fleet that's already on the road, it's hard to improve. And we actually, the car industry, or at least General Motors, is deep into that since 2010. But going forward, especially the autonomous vehicle, the whole cybersecurity aspect is taken well under account. And there's a lot of means, hardware and software that we try to protect that. Saying that, it's handled by the government as well as the car makers, and it's a team effort here to protect the transportation system.
Yes, please.
I can try to touch that. The societal benefit of smart transportation are huge. We're talking about $1.3 trillion just for the US alone. Think about a reduction of 1.2 million deaths a year, reduction in CO2 emission, free up space in cities, like reduced number of lanes. You don't need the parking structure. You don't need as much as fuel stations. So users going to enjoy more free space in city centers. You can redeploy your time from driving and looking for parking to work and leisure. You can, the energy efficiency going to be much faster, much better. Congestion will be reduced. So from the user standpoint, smart transportation system, which means autonomous vehicle plus smart apps that navigate users, going to be really meaningful to the end user.
I think the point you made about what consumers are looking for is incredibly key, because I think that is ultimately where this industry will have to kind of determine which tack to take, right? I think speed is an interesting point. Cost is certainly very important. The point you made about opportunity cost of time and what you could be doing during that period, particularly in countries with historically long commute times, I think is incredibly impactful, and you could argue even more leverage, right? If people are using that time to educate themselves or start businesses or whatever it may be, that the upside is significant.
All these electric trains and autonomic trains you have already that is running today, and you have it also a very nice solution today for wireless charging for cars and other things that is running. It can be, and especially for Israel, if you have autonomic monorail, autonomic bus, or autonomic metro, it's like an elevator of Shabbat, so you can solve the problem even in Shabbat in Israel.
All right, I think we do have many other questions. I do have lots of other questions.
I'm really sorry. I know
we're being chased away. We can continue this on the lawn if you want.
Oh, okay, so a very short, but really this is going to be the last one. Okay, well, this is a very short question, but you know, I suggest that it's going to be like the next panel next year, but no, I'm really sorry. I mean, it's a very interesting question, and as I said at the beginning, it is true that the digital revolution is completely transforming our everyday life, and especially when we're speaking about transformation of mobility. But we will have to stop to go for another one. I would like to thank all our panelists for this very, very interesting panel.